Welcome back, investors. Welcome to a new video. It's about NVIDIA. So for those who follow our channel, by the way, do not forget to subscribe to our channel. Actually, I covered NVIDIA a couple of weeks ago, right? But I wanted to redo a video because NVIDIA is currently a very hot share on the stock market. And yesterday, something specific happened, is that the market actually punished the NVIDIA company after publishing their Q2 fiscal 25 results. And the share price actually lost 6 or 38%. And I think it's important to understand what is going on, what happened to NVIDIA, to be able to understand also why the market is reacting like this. So first things first, let's look at their revenues and what did they report. So you look here at this graph where I pulled together like the latest the last 6 quarters. You see actually that the company NVIDIA is growing. It has been growing a lot. So if you compare to Q1 fiscal 24, that's just like 6 quarters ago, so 1.5 years ago, they were doing a total amount of revenue of rough cut, let's say $7-8 billion US per quarter. They're doing now 30 billion. So that's rough cut, that's like 4 times more, right? And yesterday they published rough cut 30 billion of revenues for the last quarter. And one of the reasons why the market has been reacting negatively, I'm going to show this to you in this graph and the next graph, is that actually when you look at the white curve here, see these percentages, you see actually that the growth is now flattening. So it's kind of reaching a plateau where you see that maybe between Q1 and Q2, the growth was of 88% and it's coming down to 34, 22, 18, and now 15%. So I would say, as it always happens, and this is something that I always teach my students at bachelor level or master level, is that indeed that at a certain moment in time, a company cannot grow at, for example, a rate of 88% indefinitely. That doesn't exist, right? So, and you see here again an example of a very hot stock, which is NVIDIA, which actually, where we see, and investors are in the market is seeing that the growth is plateauing actually. Probably the figure that is making the market most nervous is this one. So you see here, let me start with the blue curve. You see that the blue curve actually is the same like here, it's like this 88, 34, 22, 18, and 15% growth. So that's the growth of the revenue. What is more important to analyze is the growth of the profits of the company. And that's the orange curve, what you see here. And you see actually that the profitability is coming down as well. And actually, I will not say it's even worse. I mean, the profitability is good. The last quarter, the profitability of the company has been 12%. It's not like they would be printing losses. That's not the case, right? But you see that it's the first time actually since the last 6 quarters that the profitability is actually below the growth rate in terms of revenue. So the profit growth rate is below the revenue growth rate. And this is one of the reasons why the market is getting very nervous. Why? And we will speak about intrinsic valuation later on. Even though I'm a value investor, I'm not a growth investor. But even growth investors are seeing that both revenue growth is plateauing, so it's flattening, and profit growth as well. So they are probably in their valuation let's say calculations, when they calculate the intrinsic value even of a growth company, they will probably now factor in that growth actually is coming down, which through that reduces the intrinsic valuation even for a growth investor. And we'll come to that later on. But first also let's understand what is NVIDIA doing in terms of products. Just want to give you a very quick update on that. So NVIDIA actually, I mean, some of you may have known NVIDIA, and the first time I have been in contact with NVIDIA is because I was buying a graphic card for my PC actually. And at that time, I mean, those graphic cards were great for gamers, for really having strong visualization power on your PC. What happened is with the appearance of ChatGPT, specifically ChatGPT 3, I think that was November 2022, everybody has been looking at artificial intelligence. Everybody has been saying, okay, we need to ramp up our hardware capacity in terms of artificial intelligence, right? There's something that Microsoft looked into that, Google looked into that, Meta, so Facebook, Meta Holdings looked into that, Tesla probably as well with autonomous vehicles and other car manufacturers. And in order to, I mean, those workloads which are typical artificial intelligence workloads like autonomous vehicles or machine learning, natural language processing, they require GPUs. The GPUs compared to the CPUs, this CPUs is something more that Intel Corporation has been specialized since many, many decades in. but the GPUs are actually more optimized for those artificial intelligence workloads, in fact. And this is why you see this. I mean, if I come back here, you see this just crazy growth, like in, I would say 18 months, multiplying the revenue by 4 times. I mean, that's really exceptional, right? But the reason it's linked to that. And when you look at some benchmarks, I mean, the intention is to have a quick video or quick facts video that you really get a good, very fast and quick grasp of who is NVIDIA and what is going on there. I've just put you here 2 machine learning benchmarks, and you see actually the models of NVIDIA that they are selling that are popping up, like the H100, the A100. So you clearly see that, I mean, those, let's say, chipsets are actually the strongest currently in terms of machine learning workloads, right? So workloads that are really intended for artificial intelligence applications. And if we look specifically, and I just wanted to give you maybe a benchmark that is easier to understand. So, I mean, I do not know if you know what ResNet 50 is, but so that's like a 50-layer deep neural network that is widely used in computer vision for classifying images, for fragmenting, for segmenting images, etc. We're not detecting objects, for example. And you can imagine that this is for autonomous vehicles, it's important. But even for a large language model like ChatGPT or Google Gemini, if you're giving to this model visual, let's say, cognitive functions, I mean, it has to be able to understand images, right? So we are again in a typical AI application. And today, in fact, and if I come back to the benchmark, you see the H100 being today the most powerful one in terms of machine learning performance. So just to give you a sense, when we use a artificial neural network like a ResNet 50, which is a deep neural network, and you would have one H100, well, that machine or that chipset can process nearly 20,000 images per second. What NVIDIA will come up with now, and they have, I'm not sure if they launched the production, I think they have launched the production, they're going to actually ship what is called the GH200. That will actually be able to process close to 30,000 images per second on this deep neural network, just to give you a sense of the power of something like this, right? So you can imagine the type of application that you can do with such performance benchmarks. This is just an example of a convolutional neural network where you see, like, you give it a vision and you ask actually, or you give it an image and you ask a convolutional neural network to like categorize what it sees on the image, and you see, for example, this could be used, for example, for geographic map interpretation, right? Just to give you a sense of that. So you can see the type of application. You're going to have this in autonomous vehicles for object recognition, etc., etc. We're not going into the details of it. So what is also interesting to understand is where the revenues are coming from before we finish this video with what is actually one share of NVIDIA worth today. So when you look at where the revenues are coming from, I'm going to give you 2 angles. One is geographical angle and the other one is customer angle. So in terms of geographical angle, you see that the US, they represent, so in the last quarter, they generated a revenue of $30 billion US, so NVIDIA as a company. And from those 30 billion, 13 billion, so let's say rough cut, a little bit more than a third is coming from the US, right? So probably, and we will speak about it in the next slide, those are probably big tech firms that are buying NVIDIA stuff. You see that Taiwan is also actually is the second largest geographical market for NVIDIA, and then you have Singapore, and then you have China, and then you have other countries, which probably includes Europe and Latin America, and also to some extent Africa. I would hope so. So and what is interesting for also in the context of China, what has to be discussed as well is, do not forget that the US government has published some restrictions on the export of those chipsets. Why? Because those chipsets can be used to train AI, and today there's an arms race about who's going to have the best model on AI, and this is a geopolitical agenda. So obviously, and if you would read the comments actually from what NVIDIA is stating related to, let's say, geopolitical aspects, it clearly says that there is a risk if the US government even increases further the export restrictions, that, they will not be able to export to China. China is just rough cut, let's say, 10-12% of the overall revenues, but still it's still 10 to 12%, right? I mean, that's their growth that they're having. So today they have like 15% growth, 12% profitability. If somebody would say you can no longer export anything to China, well, they are done. I mean, then the company is just being flat, except if other geographies compensate for further growth. In terms of customers, that's very interesting. So what I'm showing you here on the top of this slide, actually, this is part of the latest 10Q report, so the latest quarterly report, where of course they're not mentioning who customer A, B, C, D, E is and from which geography they are coming from. But they're mentioning that customer A represents alone by itself like 14%, which is a lot in fact. And customer B 11%, customer C 11%, customer D 10%. And they had customer E who was, which is still for the last 6 months representing 10% of their overall revenues. But in the last quarter, it actually passed below the threshold of 10% of total revenue. And it's very, in the financial reports, of course, NVIDIA does not say who those customers are. I mean, that would be competitive information, right? For Intel, for AMD, etc., or Qualcomm or whomever. And so, but what is interesting, when you read a little bit the press and you search a little bit, I found, for example, a Motley Fool article where they were mentioning that very probably Amazon, Meta Platform, so that's Facebook, Microsoft, and Alphabet, so that's Google, are believed to be among NVIDIA's biggest customers. At that time, that was May 2nd of this year, this article was expecting to be roughly 40% of the revenues. And there was another source from Omdia Research where they were estimating, if you remember these H100s, so coming back here, that's the one that they are already now shipping. So just to give you, and I do not remember the exact pricing, but I think an H100 is like $35,000 one chipset. So just look at the amounts or the numbers of shipments that are estimated for Meta, for Microsoft, for Google, for Amazon, Oracle. You have Tencent, that's one of the Chinese customers, very probably Baidu as well, Alibaba as well. You see Tesla popping up, TikTok as well. So those are huge numbers. So you need to imagine also the whole supply chain that goes with it. So, but what is clear is that today big tech are the customers of NVIDIA, right? And they are buying those chipsets to train furthermore their AI models, in fact. So, and you see that the top 5 of their customers, rough cut, makes out 45 to 50% of the overall revenues of the last quarter. Well, it's something that when I think about investing into companies, and again, I did not make any disclaimer, I do not have any shares in NVIDIA, but I like to have recurring revenues, right? And one thing that appears now also in the financial reports of NVIDIA, because it's nice to sell products, but at a certain moment in time, either the performance becomes so big that actually those big tech companies, they change. So they decommission the old chipsets and they buy new ones. So that creates some kind of revenue recurrence, but that requires probably big efforts in terms of research and development. But one of the things that is interesting as well is if they do provide maintenance services, other type of services which create, let's say, recurring revenues actually. What is interesting to read in one of the last financial reports is that NVIDIA says, so I'm quoting NVIDIA here, we have begun offering enterprise customers NVIDIA GX cloud services directly and through our network of partners, which include cloud-based infrastructure, software, and services for training and deploying AI models. And they also mentioned we have partners with cloud solution providers, with CSPs, to host such software and service in their data center. So it looks like indeed that they have understood that it's not just about selling hardware to those big tech companies, but actually what is very probably much more profitable is getting those, I would say, recurring taxes by having customers pay on a recurring basis the use of your hardware. Actually, this is basically what the hyperscale cloud providers like Amazon and Microsoft and Google are doing, right? So just think about it, that at least what is not clear to me today as they provide the reporting is we do not see exactly what is the amount of revenue that is recurring versus the amount of revenue that is non-recurring. If you compare it with the Microsoft, for example, financial reports, it's much clearer actually. Right. Final part of this video, I wanted to share also what is NVIDIA worth, because a lot of people are asking me, Why did I not invest into it? I mean, for those who know me, is I always would like to get some kind of passive income, and I mean, who would have been expecting this to happen over the last 18 months, right? Now, I would say retrospectively, it feels easy to say, yeah, but I mean, the company has grown 4 times and the share price at least 4 times as well, blah, blah, blah. But I think it's also important, at least for me as an investor, to understand what is a share of the company worth. So first of all, I looked at Morningstar, and Morningstar actually, if you look at, I mean, I've pulled this information yesterday, so you see actually that on August 29th, so the price was 117.59 US dollars, and the fair valuation, what they consider fair valuation, is around 105 US dollars per share. And what is always interesting in Morningstar is that they provide a 1-star price and a 5-star price. So 1-star price is when actually they consider that what the market is providing in terms of share price is just exaggerated, and 5-star price is when it is extremely low, extremely cheap to buy that. So we could kind of consider that maybe the 5-star price would be a buying signal for everybody to buy NVIDIA. What I wanted to do as well, I mean, you know that we have created VinGPT to support already us, first of all, as investors in our investment journey, but also to help other, let's say, investors throughout the world, to support them in their investment journey, is asking VinGPT to provide the intrinsic value. So what is one share of NVIDIA worth, taking into account the latest information that is available, financial information? And this is, of course, is not taking yet the latest financial report, is just taking the previous one. So with the previous report, actually, if you would ask VinGPT what is one share of NVIDIA worth, from a dividend discount model, is extremely low because the company is paying no dividends. I think I read yesterday that they will be paying out 0.01 cents, so actually 1 cent per share in terms of dividends. I mean, that's ridiculously low. I mean, you're gonna not do anything with that. They're spending a lot of money. I think they have an allowance by the board of directors to spend 50 billion on share buybacks, which potentially may push the price up artificially as well of a single share. And then you have, like, in terms of intrinsic value and discounted cash flow, what I calculated, and I mean, for those who want to stay until the end, I'm going to show you how I have adapted the intrinsic valuation calculation. So I used here as assumptions 20% growth rate over the next 20 years with a 13.94 cost of capital, because that's the cost of capital that Oswald Damodaran has been publishing January 2024 about the semiconductor industries, right? So by looking at that, and of course you have to decide your own cost of capital, you have to decide on your own growth rate over the next, is it 20 years? Per default, VinGPT will calculate over 30 years. I mean, Vinj comes up with a intrinsic value between 55 and 59 US dollars a share. So, I mean, it's pretty close to what Morningstar says this would be, like a cheap price, not the fair price, but the cheap price. What is always, I mean, what you never know when you have, I mean, those websites that provide you a fair value at 105 US dollars, they do not tell you exactly how they calculate this. So here you see, by using discounted cash flow, discounted future earnings, and you apply 20% growth rate for the next 20 years, and you see that the curve is coming down, it will not be 20%. And you would apply a 13.94 cost of capital. Probably, I'm expecting that Morningstar will probably apply a lower cost of capital. You end up actually with a intrinsic value of one share of NVIDIA at 55 to 59, or between 55 and 59 US dollars. So for those who are interested, I mean, I've put here the video. You see the sequence of prompts that I used to come up with these results. So I asked first, Vinj, do you have NVIDIA in your companies? You see the video running on the right-hand side. And then I ask Vinj, okay, great, but what is NVIDIA's intrinsic value? You see me typing here in the prompt of VinGPT. And so let me just quickly roll the video. And then you see actually that it is then coming back and saying, okay, on August 23rd, because I mean, we are updating once per week the financial metrics in our investment universe. Then I said, okay, I mean, it already comes up with some intrinsic values, and I'm asking it, what assumptions have you been using? And it will say 30 years, 7% growth, 7% discount rate, and 3% growth rate. And I'm asking it, okay, but please adjust So first I want to know what is the right cost of capital for the company, because NVIDIA has probably a shorter S-curve of corporate growth than other more traditional companies like Unilever, for example, or Mondelez International, or Pepsi, or Coca-Cola. So actually Vinge, you see it here, is looking at NVIDIA being part of the semiconductors industry. What is the cost of capital, cost of equity, cost of debt? And is basically saying, okay, but the appropriate cost of capital should be 13.94%. And we are using, as was the Modarans from New York University Stern Business School, as a benchmark. So then I'm asking actually Vinge, okay, can you use that figure and also change the amount of years to 20 and the growth rate to 15%? And you will see it will come up with, what was it, between 33 and 37 US dollars intrinsic value. And then I'm asking you, okay, if you change the growth rate to 20%, how should it be? So I'm just illustrating here how you can play with the model, but this is probably, and this is basically what I'm missing. If you allow me to go back, I will stop the video here, is what I'm missing is when Morningstar, for example, and we love Morningstar, do not get me wrong, but when Morningstar publishes a fair value, a 1-star price and a 5-star price, they're not mentioning what are the assumptions below. And this is basically something that Vinge does, because me as an investor, I feel that this is basically missing. So I think what we can conclude here is that, so I mean, coming back to the revenue curve, I mean, it's not that the company is in big trouble, but it's just that the market, if it is here on the revenue growth or on the profitability growth, is that the market is seeing actually that the profitability growth and the revenue growth is coming to more normal figures actually. So that's basically what I wanted to share with you. I hope that this is useful. Maybe gives you a first, or I mean, maybe you knew NVIDIA, so maybe nothing new for you. But otherwise, for those who did not know NVIDIA, I wanted to share, let's say, the financial perspective very quickly. I'm not analyzing now the balance sheet and those type of things, the cash flow statement. It would take me much longer time. But I wanted to share also a little bit what type of products that they're selling and why is there such an excitement related to AI workloads around NVIDIA. So thanks for your attention, and talk to you in the next video.